I'm Alex, Pop Culture Brain, and these are the top stories in movies and television today. First up, Disney has announced that it is making a Space Mountain movie. Recently, we had Disney making a Haunted Mansion movie. They are also working at rebooting Pirates of the Caribbean. And now the latest theme park ride that is getting a film is going to be Space Mountain. And The Hollywood Reporter is reporting that they have hired the Cowboy Bebop showrunners, Josh Applebaum and Andre Nemec, to write the script based on Space Mountain. These guys also created the Amazon show Citadel, and as well as Cowboy Bebop, they created the live action. They ran the live action series based on the anime. And Jonathan Eyrick from Rideback is going to be producing the Space Mountain movie for Disney. His company produced the live action Avatar: The Last Airbender series for Netflix. The writers, it should also be mentioned, Applebaum and Nemec, they wrote the live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies from the 2010s, and they also wrote Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol. That's like the only credit of theirs that I think is any good. It seems like all these other things are just kind of and so I'm not particularly interested or thrilled in the idea of this Space Mountain movie based on who's involved. Maybe it could be good. I'm just also wondering why Disney decided to make this film. Like, Haunted Mansion was a big failure at the box office last year. Disney lost significant money. It didn't even make back its budget at the box office. So what gave them the idea that a Space Mountain movie is going to work? Also, what's interesting is something like Haunted Mansion has a lot of lore and a lot of story from the ride that could be pulled into the movie and serve as like a nostalgic thing for viewers. But Space Mountain doesn't have any story. It has some iconic imagery, such as its building, and of course, like riding through the dark in space. People would connect, if you make a movie, will connect that with the ride. But it seems that Applebaum and Nemec are going to be creating a story from whole cloth. We'll keep an eye on this. I'm really interested to see what happens, but I'm not optimistic right now about a live-action Space Mountain movie. The next story on the list is about why Quentin Tarantino dropped The Movie Critic as his next film. So Quentin Tarantino was set to make this movie called The Movie Critic as his 10th and final film. He's long said that he was only going to make 10 films total, and he's at 9 already, and the next one will be his 10th and final film. And so The Hollywood Reporter had this big article explaining why recently Tarantino said, no, never mind, I'm not making The Movie Critic. And then Jordan Rumi from World of Real has aggregated it and sort of summed it up. And I thought there were some interesting things here about why this fell apart. First of all, one agency partner, one of the agents for Quentin Tarantino, told The Hollywood Reporter, I don't recall him rewriting so much and pushing a start date once he had a movie in mind. And part of the reason why he left this project and dropped it is because Tarantino had more ideas that he was excited by other than this. And so then it goes on to say that there were a bunch of different versions of this story that Tarantino was playing with and trying to rewrite to try and figure it out. The first one, it was going to be about the film critic, the real film critic from the 1970s, Pauline Kael. Then it was going to be about a 70s porno rag movie critic, possibly Jim Shelton. But that was sidelined instead for a film about Brad Pitt's Cliff Booth, that story would have been really similar to the novelization that Tarantino wrote about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So a lot of different ideas that Tarantino was toying with. Didn't seem like he could land on one that really interested him. But what is really fascinating is that Tarantino was going to use this movie, which was about movies, to bring back a lot of his old characters and old cast members that he's worked with before, in sort of like this meta, maybe kind of like Avengers sort of way of being like, all right, we're going to have Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta come back, and they're going to maybe reprise their roles from Pulp Fiction. And Kurt Russell was rumored to be part of this metaverse. And World of Real is speculating that Uma Thurman probably would have been there. And so Tarantino could bring back some of the stars of his earlier work to reprise iconic characters in this movie within movie moments, or to play fictional versions of themselves as the actors who played those characters. Very, very meta. I think this could have been cool, but maybe a little bit too winking, haha, isn't this so funny? Look at all these people that used to be in my movies, and here they are again, and sort of. It doesn't seem to me like a very organic way to tie everything together. It seems almost forced, and a little bit, I don't know, maybe below what Tarantino is good at. And so I'm kind of glad that he dropped this idea and is instead pursuing something else. It seems the movie critic could have included people like Olivia Wilde, Margot Robbie, Jamie Foxx, and David Krumholtz, but it's not happening now, so we'll never know. Hopefully Tarantino comes up with something good for his 10th and final film. All right, next story I'm going to highlight here is the recent Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2024 inductees have been announced. Cher, A Tribe Called Quest, Ozzy Osbourne, Mary J. Blige, who else? Foreigner, Dave Matthews Band, Kool and the Gang, Peter Frampton, as well as the people I mentioned before, are going to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. Jimmy Buffett is also being recognized for his musical excellence. Buffett recently passed away. And then other inductees include Dionne Warwick, Norman Whitfield, Alexis Korner, John Mayall, MC5, Suzanne DePass, and Big Mama Thornton. It's always interesting to see who the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducts. I think Tribe Called Quest, Cher, Foreigner, Dave Matthews Band, Kool and the Gang, Mary J. Blige, Peter Frampton, Ozzy Osbourne. Can't argue with any of those. I think that they're all worthy. It's also interesting to see who they passed over this year. So the way that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame works is they have a whole group of nominees for each year, and then they select from that group of nominees the people who are actually going to be inducted. And this year's nominees included, here's the people who didn't make the cut: Mariah Carey, Eric B. and Rakim, Jane's Addiction, Lenny Kravitz, Oasis, Sinead O'Connor, and Sade. So that's pretty fascinating to me that they passed over Oasis, for example, and Jane's Addiction, Lenny Kravitz. I'm sure these people will probably, if you've been nominated, you're probably going to get in eventually. But it's just fascinating to me that these people didn't make the cut this time. Next story to highlight here is a pretty big one, especially if you're watching this on TikTok, but just in general. The Senate has passed the TikTok ban bill, and that's going to be setting up now a legal battle between TikTok and the United States government on First Amendment grounds. So basically, the House attached a new TikTok ban bill. And when I say TikTok ban bill, what it really is, it is a bill that will force ByteDance, the owner of TikTok, which is a Chinese company, to sell its ownership of TikTok to an American company or another company outside of China. And if and when the bill passes, they would have up to a year to divest. ByteDance would have up to a year to divest and to sell TikTok. So what the House did is they attached this bill to another bill that was for funding, that was for setting aside budget to give funding to Israel and the Ukraine. And so, of course, when you have this big bill that's a combination of a bunch of different things, that's going to get easily passed through. So that went through the House, and now it did also go through the Senate. See right here, the Senate approval of TikTok ban bill was tied to a $95 billion package of foreign aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The Senate approved this bill by 79-18 vote, and now it is going to go to Biden's desk, and he has said that he will sign it. But TikTok is not going to go down without a fight, of course, and they are planning to file a lawsuit and to challenge this in court almost immediately on the grounds of the First Amendment. They say that this legislation is a clear violation of First Amendment rights. Michael Beckerman, TikTok's head of policy, wrote, "This is the beginning, not the end of this long process," and called it an unprecedented deal between the Senate and the House. And I also wanted to show this quote from the ACLU, who also are taking a stand against it. TikTok has said the bill, if it becomes law, would infringe the free speech rights of its 170 million U.S. users and devastate the estimated 7 million American businesses on the platform. It claims TikTok contributes $24 billion to the U.S. economy annually. Okay, so here's what the ACLU said about the TikTok ban. This is still nothing more than an unconstitutional ban in disguise. This is Jenna Leventoff, a senior policy counsel at the ACLU. Banning a social media platform that hundreds of millions of Americans use to express themselves would have devastating consequences for all of our First Amendment rights and will almost certainly be struck down in court. So that is a good thing, potentially. But if you see, TikTok, the news is the ban, or rather the law that would force ByteDance to sell TikTok has passed in the House. It's passed in the Senate. It goes to Biden's desk now. He has said he's going to pass it. It's attached to funding foreign aid, so there's even more likely that Biden is gonna sign it. But once it's signed, TikTok is going to immediately file a lawsuit, and now it will become a battle in the courts to see if it's legal. There was, I believe in Montana, Montana tried to pass a ban on TikTok, and it was struck down on First Amendment grounds, saying that it was a violation of the First Amendment. So there is a little bit of precedent. I don't know if that would be in play for a federal law, but it seems the ACLU and TikTok are confident that this law would violate the First Amendment. Moving along, here's a kind of interesting story for people who follow movie development and just film in general. Slash Film is reporting, based on sources, an interview that the director of A Knight's Tale did with Inverse. Just want to get his name right. Brian Helgeland. So the headline is, A Knight's Tale sequel could have happened, but Netflix's algorithm killed it. I don't know if there are any Knight's Tale fans out there, but this is sad news for you all. I don't have particular affinity to this movie, but this is an interesting story regardless. So Brian Helgeland directed A Knight's Tale, came out in 2001, starring Heath Ledger. And what's interesting is that it was a bomb in its first week, making only $16 million against a $65 million budget. But then it did go on to make its money back. And Helgeland has had ideas for sequels over the years. But it seems that most recently, Netflix sort of killed it because of their algorithm. So he first had the idea for the sequel as soon as the original movie came out. And the new film would have been a tongue-in-cheek seafaring adventure that seemingly had more to do with Robert Louis Stevenson than any medieval author. So it seems like the director was thinking about making it a pirate movie. He said right here, "We're already thinking about making the sequel a pirate film." That could be interesting, but it turns out Sony didn't want to make that movie after the movie had come out. A few years later, Paul Bettany and Alan Tudyk, who were in the original, also had an idea for a sequel that could have been done without William Thatcher, Heath Ledger's character. Their pitch was, guys had an idea that William passed away during a war, and then he had a teenage daughter who wants to joust, but she's not allowed because she's a woman. And then she tracks down the whole gang from the original, and they agree to teach her. And it's a whole kind of thing, cross-dressing sort of Mulan kind of deal. But that obviously didn't happen either. And then there was a newer sequel that was maybe going to be developed, also potentially about Thatcher's teenage daughter, that Sony was interested in making. So it seems that Sony was eager to make a late-stage sequel to A Knight's Tale, given the success that sequels and reboots had in the 2010s. Sony's plan was to release A Knight's Tale 2 with partial funding and home distribution from Netflix. All right, so it seems like it wouldn't have been theatrical. It would have just gone straight to Netflix. And then Helgeland, the original director, said, "I pitched it to Sony because they own the rights, and it seems like they were interested in making it with Netflix and releasing it as a Netflix movie. But then Netflix tested the sequel idea through their algorithms, which indicated that it would not be successful." So this is kind of fascinating to me that Netflix takes ideas for movies and it runs them through an algorithm. Obviously, that's not news. Of course, Netflix's whole thing, it's very algorithm-based. It's very data-based. Netflix is pretty much a tech company that also makes movies and TV, kind of. And so it's no surprise that they would judge whether a movie would be successful based on what its algorithm says. This is probably happening literally every day, every minute at Netflix. Regardless, it is fascinating to hear publicly that an idea, that a director talking about, hey, I had an idea for a movie. It was a sequel to my previous movie that was successful that people seem to like, but the Netflix algorithm said no thanks. It's not hard to believe that's a thing, but it is interesting to hear it in public. Whether you feel like entertainment and programming decisions should be made by algorithms or by people, that's up for debate. I don't think it's right. I don't think there's one right way or wrong way. If Netflix wants to run numbers and run things through their computer algorithms to see what's going to be successful, that's up to them. They're the number one streaming platform, so I guess it's working. But it also is sad to see the days of like creatives or people who just had a gut feeling on a project, maybe not being able to get their projects through. And here's a big story, another story about Sony. Sony has landed a remake of Clue, and they're going to be developing it into projects for both film and television. This is a brand new thing. So there have actually been, over the years, a bunch of developments of different projects to turn Clue into a movie. Of course, there is the classic 1985 film, but then more recently, it seems like there was a project set up at 20th Century Studios with Ryan Reynolds and Jason Bateman circling to star. In 2022, Oren Uziel, who did The Lost City, was going to rewrite that movie, but it seems like it didn't go anywhere. And now it seems Sony has grabbed the rights to make a Clue movie, and they're going to do something for film and for television. No one else, IndieWire says, is making a Clue project. This is the one Clue project in development in Hollywood. I think the 1985 film is kind of perfect, so I'm a little skeptical of what they're going to do here, but stranger things have happened, and of course, this is one of many, many, many things, many projects that Hasbro is developing based on all of its toys. Of course, Mattel found huge success with Barbie last year. We all know that. But now Hasbro is developing movies and other projects based on G.I. Joe, Transformers. Obviously, it was announced at CinemaCon that Transformers and G.I. Joe will have a crossover movie. Seems they're making Magic of the Gathering project, Candyland, Ouija. They have done Ouija movies. I guess they're doing more. And also recently, we learned that a Monopoly movie is in production at Lionsgate, and Margot Robbie's company Lucky Chap is producing that one. So board games, making movies. It is just the state of Hollywood right now, that if there's a recognizable IP, they're going to jump on and try and make it. And the latest one that it's been confirmed is that Clue is coming to film and television. Obviously, murder mysteries are kind of popular right now. I would say that they are having a renaissance of sorts. The Knives Out movies are huge, also really well made. So it seems pretty logical that a movie studio such as Sony is like, hey, we want part of that. Let's grab up the rights to Clue. And the bonus with Clue is that it has a big recognizable name that they could put on it, and you know exactly what you're getting with that. So no surprises here, though, the question is, do they need to make more Clue movies and TV shows when we already have a perfect movie from 1985 starring Tim Curry? Next bit of entertainment news to talk about here this morning. There was an accident on the set of an Amazon movie starring Eddie Murphy and Keke Palmer that happened in Atlanta. The film is called The Pickup. And it's a heist film, currently filming for Amazon MGM Studios. It stars Eddie Murphy and Keke Palmer. They're shooting right now in Atlanta, and there was an accident on the set that left several crew members injured. And Amazon MGM Studios spokesperson said the incident occurred during a second unit action sequence. So the second unit is where you have a splinter crew go off that's shooting other things that maybe don't involve the main stars and the main director. Sometimes there's even a second unit director who shoots that additional material. And Amazon says, unfortunately, the sequence did not go as planned and several members of the crew were injured. The Associated Press got a little bit more details on this, saying that it was a car crash that occurred when a truck, quote, locked up and hit another vehicle. According to an anonymous source, it was a complete freak accident during a stunt that was considered wasn't considered especially treacherous. So it seems like this was not like some highly complicated, really dangerous stunt. It was just a car accident where a truck hit a car, and 2 crew members were hospitalized as a result, and 1 remained in the hospital yesterday. The injuries ranged from bumps and bruises to broken bones. So it doesn't seem like anyone is really severely injured. Of course, bruises and broken bones are no good, and everyone should be safe on a film set. We've seen a lot of incidences in recent years of poor safety on film sets. The most famous, of course, is on Rust, where cinematographer Helena Hutchinson was killed after a gun went off that included a live round and not a blank at the hands of Alec Baldwin. The armorer on that film was just convicted and sentenced. And Alec Baldwin still continues to face legal challenges from that incident. IATSE, who represents the crew, spoke about this car crash on the set of the Eddie Murphy movie, The Pickup. IATSE is aware and has started an inquiry into what happened. So everybody who works on film sets out there, stay safe. It always sucks to hear about stories like this of accidents happening during movie productions. Here's an interesting fact for you. 3 Guy Ritchie movies have bombed at the box office in 13 months. First of all, hats off to Guy Ritchie, who continues to get movies made left and right. He's made some great movies in the past, but also some not great movies. But this guy just works. Like, he gets hired time after time to make films, and to even just have 3 movies in theaters in a 13-month period is a pretty big deal and pretty impressive. Now, the fact that they all bombed is kind of telling and surprising. The movies are The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which opened last week, Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre, and The Covenant, which came out last year. So Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare opened to just $8.9 million and came in 4th last weekend. What do we got here? Operation Fortune opened to $3.1 million last year. It only made $49 million worldwide against a budget of $50 million. So just barely getting to where its budget is, but then probably not recouping its costs from marketing. And The Covenant, I don't know this. Here it is. And The Covenant opened to $6.3 million on this same weekend last year, topping out at just $21 million worldwide against a $55 million budget. And that had Jake Gyllenhaal in it. So what's interesting is that Guy Ritchie is making all of these mid-tier movies. Like, he's getting them made, and they're not super high risk for the studios that are making them, because they seem to all have like these $55 million budgets, $60 million budgets, which aren't huge gambles. And when they hit, they can make good money for the studios. But for whatever reason, no one's going to see these Guy Ritchie movies. I mean, maybe the marketing is not good. I don't really know here. And so like maybe the question is like, okay, but why? How does Guy Ritchie keep getting these movies greenlit? If he has 3 bombs in a row, is he going to continue to be able to make movies? And the answer is he had 2 really successful mid-budget movies come out just a few years ago. So you've got The Gentleman, which made $115 million worldwide against a $22 million budget. That's a huge success. And then in 2021, he had Wrath of Man, which pulled in $140 $4 million against a $40 million budget. And that's 2021, like peak pandemic. So pretty impressive that he could even get to that number. Now, also of note that there was probably less competition in theaters at the time. So it makes sense that the studios are trying to chase this success with Guy Ritchie, but I really wonder where his career goes from here. But I do hope that movie studios continue to take risks and greenlight these mid-budget movies, even if they are, action dramas that Ritchie likes to make, because we need diversity in theaters. Diversity is good for diversity of stories that are told is good for movie fans, I think. Who wants to just have superhero tentpoles every single weekend? You know what I mean? And here's an interesting quote. Ben Stiller recently went on David Duchovny's podcast and spoke openly about the failure of Zoolander 2. Zoolander 2, maybe you remember the sequel to Zoolander 2, maybe the sequel to Zoolander, maybe you don't. It kind of seems like it came and went and was pretty much rejected by everybody. It came out in 2016. It was critically panned. It was a commercial failure, and that was pretty much it. And so Stiller spoke to David Duchovny on his podcast, Fail Better, and he said, I thought everybody wanted this. It seems like the lack of success of Zoolander 2 caught Stiller by surprise and really put him into a place of self-doubt. He said, I must have really fucked this up. Everybody didn't go to it, and it's gotten these horrible reviews. It really freaked me out because I was like, I didn't know it was that bad. I think there might be a little typo there, but he was surprised. He didn't think it was bad, and then the lack of success caught him off guard. And what scared me the most was he was afraid that he was losing his understanding of what was funny, and he was really questioning himself. It definitely blindsided me, and it definitely affected me for a long time. Now, what's interesting is that it sort of came with a silver lining because it sent Stiller back to the drawing board to really reconsider his career and what happened to him and what he could do next. And he said it gave Zoolander 2 being a failure gave him the space to consider what happened next. If it was a hit, he probably would have gone off and made Zoolander 3, he said, or some other comedy. But it allowed him to reevaluate his artistry, cracked his writing here, and follow a different path. Stiller explained, I had this space to kind of sit with myself and have to deal with it and other projects that I had been working on. Not comedies, some of them. I have the time to actually just work on and develop. And if you've been following Stiller's career, you know what happens next. He made Escape at Dannemora, the miniseries, in 2018, and got award nominations for that. And then he went and he directed Severance, the hugely popular and awesome Apple TV show that Cracked is reporting just recently wrapped filming on its highly anticipated second season. So it sounds like we're going to get that soon, which is really exciting. Yeah, maybe the Zoolander franchise collapsed and Zoolander 2 wasn't what anybody wanted it to be. But, it led Stiller to where he is now as a fantastic, serious director. I mean, he directed many, many movies prior to making these miniseries, but he seems to have really expanded what he does. And I think we're all the better for it. And then lastly, this is a little bit of a more minor news, but these are some people that I really love, and I think this project sounds interesting. Deadline is reporting that June Diane Raphael and Paul Scheer are going to star in Dinks, an improv comedy pilot from Amazon, created by Marta Kaufman, who is one of the creators on Friends. Scheer and June Diane Raphael are co-hosts of the How Did This Get Made podcast. They're both comedic actors who have been in a lot of stuff that you've probably seen over the years, like The League and Grace and Frankie. And they're also married. They're a married couple. And so the two of them are going to be starring in an improvisational style multicam comedy, which I think is really fascinating to do a multicam, but have it heavily relying on improv. June Diane Raphael and Paul Scheer are, of course, well-established improvisers. They have a whole community of friends who are improvisers as well. Jason Mantzoukas is the other co-host on the podcast of theirs. So I wonder if this show goes, will they bring in a lot of their improv friends? I think it could be really cool. The show, DINKS, stands for Dual Income, No Kids, and is about Josh and Charlie, a couple who, in absence of marriage or kids, decide to literally build a life together by renovating their nightmare of a dream house. That plot line is kind of like, I'm all right, cool. I guess that could be interesting. I'm not sure how you show a house renovation in a multicam format, but I trust the talent here. And this is just a pilot, so it might not even become a thing, but a full series. But I'm kind of fascinated by this, and I think it could be cool. Other interesting things of note here: Marta Kaufman is producing. This is her first return to multi-camera sitcom since she made Friends. She and June Diane Raphael worked together on Grace and Frankie. Also, Amazon is producing. Amazon has Freevee, which made Jury Duty, which also leaned heavily on improvisation. It's not, but it hasn't been determined yet which Amazon-owned streaming platform, whether it's Freevee or Prime Video, DINKS would go to if it goes to series. Just a cool project to keep an eye on, I think. And that is it. Those are all of the entertainment stories that I have for you today.